The blood of the Métis runs in my veins, and that's what I'm really proud of.
He'll just always, I think, be the guy out in the land. That's where he's happiest. That last voyageur, right? So.
The Saskatchewan River crosses the border of Manitoba and Saskatchewan near the island settlement of Cumberland House. In the surrounding area, the river spills its banks to form a vast inland delta that encompasses more than 2 million acres. A traditional meeting place for the Cree long before the Hudson's Bay Company arrived in 1774. This delta is one of the richest ecosystems in Western Canada. The delta is also home to a world champion long-distance canoe racer and his remarkable family. Solomon Carriere is a proud Métis who grew up in Cumberland House in the late 80s and early 90s. He captured 4 world paddling championships and set a host of records that have yet to be broken. The Carriere family lives in the heart of the Delta and earned their livelihood in the time-honored ways of their Métis ancestors. In this episode of the Sharing Circle, we meet Solomon Carriere, trapper, environmentalist, world champion, and the last of the Voyageurs.
This place is known as Big Eddy, and it's an eddy in the river, and it was a very famous place to fish. It provided food for generations, and this is where I live now, in this eddy.
Solomon spent 3 years at the University of Saskatchewan studying to be a teacher. But the 4 walls of the classroom proved too confining. His heart longed for the traditional lifestyle in which he was raised.
The blood of the Métis runs in my veins, and that's what I'm really proud of. They were the people that opened up this country, as well as the First Nation people. Well, I'm doing the same thing they're doing. I'm harvesting fur and living off the landscape here, and I think it was an honorable profession that they had. And if we think that in those terms, I think we can be good stewards of this land and environmentalists at the same time. I'm just cleaning it off. You can see the dirt there.
Solomon met his wife Renee while studying at the university.
Folktales are leftover stories. That's my first sentence.
She too would grow to love this place, with which the Carriere name has been synonymous for more than a century.
Solomon's dad and Solomon's 2 uncles started tourism in Saskatchewan. They would have Americans fly in and they would goose hunt. There was millions and millions of geese.
They got into the industry of taking people out in our marsh. They harvested fur here and utilized the game that's rich in this area. They did a nice job for us to try and emulate, and I continue that today. I'm honored to have that job to keep going. And I'll go around, turn around, and come back.
Solomon and Renee purchased Big Eddy from his father in 1982. Renee had grown up in Saskatoon, and her new home at Big Eddy lacked many of the conveniences of modern life. The nearest road was only accessible through 10 miles of marsh.
We first came in here together. We walked in the dark across country to get to our place here, and I had a pack sack, you know, I had some stuff that I was carrying, and she was right behind me. And each time I would stop, she would bump me because she was right behind me. So, so I knew she was in over her head, I guess, for being out in the wild.
I love where I live. I've made it my home. I made that decision 23 years ago. It's a long time. I'm proud and honored to call that my home now.
It's part of her now as it is being part of me.
Renee and Solomon's first child, Riel, was born in 1983.
This is yours.
4 years later, their daughter, Jacqueline, followed. But tragically, Jacqueline would succumb to cancer just before her 3rd birthday.
Jacqueline was only able to be with us for 3 years of her life. Jacqueline, when I think of Jacqueline, I'm thinking she taught me how to live also. She was so full of life when she was with us.
Renee homeschooled their 3 kids, Martina, Michaela, and Riel, through their grade school years. Solomon provided for his family in the same ways his father had, and in the summers, he raced. For his final year of high school, Riel attended the prestigious Pearson College in Victoria and then went on to study at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver.
This year he's going to graduate with a political science degree, and that makes me really proud to have one of my family to be able to attain that.
My parents, even my grandfather, was always very political. He was trying to get the road in or build a bridge. I just thought that if I took political science, it might give me the skills and tools to maybe make a difference back home maybe or elsewhere. And that really appealed to me.
Riel's sister Michaela and his mom spent the 2006 school year in La Ronge, where Michaela enrolled in high school. Renee returned to teaching for the school year, while her daughter faced full-time exposure to urban life.
Well, the first day I was really, really nervous, and I just kind of hid in the hallways. But I made it through, and I made lots of friends now, and I'm involved in activities, and I enjoy school. And living in a place like where we live at, it's very isolated, and so when you come out into the world, everything is new, and you want to learn about everything. Everything is interesting.
We have a real foot in 2 worlds, because we're not just solely out there on the land, because our son's away at Simon Fraser University. We have our girls who, you can't keep in the woods forever.
For now, 14-year-old Martina continues to homeschool and help her dad to run the camp at Big Eddy.
They're privileged to have come from this community of Cumberland House and the Delta, and to follow in the footsteps of the people before them, and to do those people honor, and to do whatever job that they choose to do well. That's what I hope for my family. I have confidence that they'll do that. We had good teachers here. They'll do it. They'll succeed. Everybody in Cumberland House paddled as soon as they could get in a canoe. Racing was a big part of the community, canoe racing. So everybody had to try it, and I was one of those guys that tried paddling.
His one uncle, Roger Carriere, was quite a famous paddler and went on to a world championship and paddled everywhere. So he was always watching and observing that.
My Uncle Roger and my dad, and they were really sports-minded people. And my Uncle Pierre, he was a runner, and my Uncle Jim, and my Uncle Alphonse, all those guys were sports people. And you just, when you're part of a family like that, it just makes you want to be one of them.
Solomon would eventually rise to be a world champion, But his journey to the pinnacle of marathon canoe racing was certainly not an easy one.
When I first started, nobody really wanted to paddle with me because I wasn't very good, I guess, and there was always guys that were better. But I'm glad it happened that way because it made me train harder and try to succeed.
He'd paddle 8 hours a day, paddle all summer long, and run and paddle and run some more and paddle. I was always paddling.
Miskaan, mistaya. Usamni gatuma sesayan. When I paddle up the river, all the wildlife that's there, you see it. You see moose swimming, ducks. And I just feel you're part of this environment here. And it's, you know, and training is easy when that's happening.
As he gained more experience, Solomon traveled throughout North America to compete against the best of the best. But he's never forgotten where he came from.
Oh, it's been a big part of my, what's helped to motivate me is to being from Cumberland House. Because that's where I learned how to paddle, and at least in the paddling world, they know where Cumberland House is now, and that gives me a good feeling to have.
He had to go against the best in the world and beat them, joined them, was beaten. He paddled with a few names, but of course the earliest on name I think in his career would be Ron Williams. They connected at a physical level but also on a personal level.
A former member of Canada's national ski team, Ron Williams proved to be the perfect mentor for Solomon. Ron knew how to compete at the highest level, and his attention to detail wasn't lost on his young protege.
This is where Sol and I were really fast, is in the shallows.
Ron was a professional athlete. When he came here, you seen how good a shape he was in, and he was very serious and very professional at it. And so you knew he meant business. He taught me how to win races, and I thank Ron for that because he was a big part of my racing career.
Solomon trained with Ron for a full year before he finally got the opportunity to race with his mentor.
He wanted to race with me, and I realized his potential, but I didn't think he was ready. First day we were second, and the next day I had a pretty good feeling about it because I knew how fast Sol could run. He was an amazing runner. There was a long portage, nearly 2 mile long portage. We put 5 minutes on the competition together, and that was all she wrote. After that, we never looked back. We raced together for the next 2 years, every race, and we won most of them. And Sol and I used to train together out on the rivers and the estuaries in Manitoba. He would show me how to look for beaver and muskrats.
Unfortunately, while Solomon's competitive paddling career was just getting started, at the age of 44, Ron's was nearly over. After just 3 years of paddling together, Ron relented and gave up the grind of the pro circuit.
How's my technique, Sol? I knew Sol had what it took, and that all he had to do was get in a canoe with just about any other paddler and that was at that same level, and they were going to win. And he won for many more years after that.
Solomon holds a lot of records. That, you know, he has records in Texas, he has records in Quebec, he has records in the Yukon, he has World Championship records, Triple Crown records. With marathon canoeing, it's not a recognized Olympic sport. I mean, imagine being a 4-time Olympic champion. It's stunning.
Bruce Barton, Jeff Kolka, and the legendary Serge Corbin were just a few of the paddling superstars that Solomon partnered with, before a serious back injury severely curtailed his racing career in the mid-1990s. In recent years, Solomon is back on the water, this time with a familiar face paddling in front of him.
I didn't want to be involved with the paddling because I just wanted to be myself, not really someone else. And that was always evident if I went to a race and saw my dad there, because everyone would be, oh, you're Solomon's son. So I guess I was kind of rebelling against it when I was younger, but gradually I accepted it.
I can't say enough of the good feeling I had when my son first asked me to race with him. I was waiting for that, and when he finally asked me, I think that was one of the happiest days of my life, to be able to sit in the same canoe as my son and paddle in a race. You know, no matter where we finished, no matter how we did, it didn't matter. You know, it was just to share that passion that I've had, and now maybe it'll continue with him and my girls.
Solomon Carriere's paddling career may be winding down, but he isn't ready to give up racing just yet. His latest goal is to race the famed Iditarod sled dog race in Alaska.
Straight ahead, yeah, boy.
I think he's evolved because his career has evolved. So he's redefined himself again as still a competitor, but also as a husband now and also a father. When I see him on the land, that'll never be any different, because that's where he was born and grew up.
Well, the otters, what they like to do is rip this beaver dam up so it drains that part of the marsh. And when it drains, all the animals are pushed together in a small spot, and then they can kill all the beavers that are on the other side there, and the muskrats and the mink and the fish also. So I'm just trying to harvest some of the bigger otters that come in here to rip this dam up.
The dynamics of the Delta have been drastically altered by the E.B. Campbell Power Dam, completed in 1967 and located just 70 kilometers upriver from Big Eddy. The dam has minimized the annual flooding along the Delta.
A flood brings in life. It brings in new plants and new nutrients for our plants that we have, for the animals that are out there. With the power dam, this Cumberland Delta, it's a very stressed place. This delta, I guess, is dying because we don't have the water it used to have.
His full-time profession now is as a trapper, so he is used to that life of solitude. For him, there's no question of that's where he'll be.
The last time I came, he put a stick in my trap. He must have had it in his mouth maybe, and the trap went off probably just before his nose, and now he knows the trap is there, so he hasn't been back yet, but we'll wait. We'll see who's has more patience. There's my snares. I'm putting them down into the runway. When I travel and when I make footprints in this land, I know very few people have come to this land and have walked here. And those people that have walked here before us were environmentalists. They cherished the land that they were on. If something happens to this land, you know, this is all we have. When you're being so connected to a place like that, it's like a farmer who has land. You take his land away, and what does he have? And it's the same with us. Even though we don't put real ownership on a lot of those places that I travel, I never think to myself that I own that land. I'm just having the privilege to borrow it.
We've lived a privileged life. I really believe that. Some people may say, well, privileged in what way? But I think it's in the real things. in family, in honesty, in healthy choices.
I see myself returning back to the wilderness just because it's so much a part of who I am. Most likely I will continue to travel and to educate myself, but I feel that my true calling is in the wilderness.
I see where the otter's using this beaver house. He took it over because there's no beaver here, so he's living here and he's coming out of this hole over here. So I'm going to put a trap over there. And so the next time I come by, I'll pick him up.
He'll just always, I think, be the guy out in the land. That's where he's happiest. But he'll always be that last voyager, right? So.
If we think of in terms as, we're just renting this land, and we treat it that way, without, like over harvesting, we will be able to leave it for the next generation. We can leave it the way we had it, so they can have it in that way, so they can use it for their livelihoods, and then pass it on to the next generation after them. And if we can follow that principle, I think we'll be able to keep this land thriving. It was in Denny. I'm going.
Way to go, Cracker. Yes, sir. Way to go, guys.